Admiral Daehyun stood at the command bridge of the flagship and looked out at the darkness of space. He was 67 years old now. His hair had turned completely white. His hands shook sometimes when he thought no one was watching. But today those hands were steady. Today was the day he had waited 50 years to see. Through the massive window he could see them. 900,000 warships. Each one was a weapon built for a single purpose. Each one carried people who had lost someone they loved. Each one was pointed at the same target. The Valthene Empire. Daehyun touched the small photograph in his pocket. His wife, his 2 children. He had been away on a supply mission when it happened. He had watched Earth die from the safety of a distant station. The Valthene weapons had turned the oceans to steam. The cities became glass. 3 billion people burned in 2 days. His family was gone before he could even say goodbye. That was 50 years ago. Humanity had spent every day since then building this fleet. The colonies had poured everything into it. Money, resources, people, hope. Children grew up learning how to fight. Factories worked day and night. Scientists created new weapons. And Daehyun had planned every detail of the attack that would finally make the Valthene pay. Behind him, Captain Hana checked the fleet status on her screen. She was 42 years old. She had been born in an evacuation shuttle while her parents fled from Earth. She had never seen the homeworld except in old videos, but she had spent her whole life preparing to avenge it. "All ships report ready, Admiral," Hana said. Her voice was calm, but Daehyun could see the fire in her eyes. "We can begin the jump sequence whenever you give the order." Daehyun nodded. He pressed the button that would broadcast his voice to every single ship in the fleet. 900,000 captains would hear him. Millions of crew members would listen. This was the moment that would define the rest of human history. 50 years ago, he began, the Valthene took everything from us. They destroyed our home. They killed our families. They thought they could erase humanity from the galaxy. They were wrong. His voice grew stronger. We survived. We rebuilt. We became stronger than they ever imagined. Today we go to their worlds. Today we show them what happens when you attack humanity. Today we make them pay for every life they took. Across the fleet, people cheered. Some cried. Some prayed. Daehyun could hear the roar of approval even through the metal walls of the ship. They were ready. They had been ready for 50 years. "All ships," Daehyun said. "Prepare for jump. We leave in 5 minutes." In the intelligence section of the flagship, Lieutenant Jae-won sat at his desk and tried to focus on his work. He was 35 years old. Before the war preparations, he had been a teacher. He studied languages and alien cultures. Now he spent his days reading intercepted Valthene communications and trying to understand the enemy. But lately, something had been bothering him. He had found old files from before Earth was destroyed. Communications between human and Valthene diplomats. They had been talking, trading, learning about each other. Some of the messages talked about problems, yes. Disagreements about territory. Misunderstandings about intentions. But they had been negotiating. They had been trying to avoid war. Then suddenly everything had gone dark. The diplomatic channels went silent. A week later, Earth was burning. The official story said the Valthene had attacked without warning, that they were monsters who wanted to destroy humanity. But these old files suggested something different, something more complicated. J1 had tried to access the complete records, but many files were classified, sealed by military command. Only the highest-ranking officers could read them. When he asked why, his superior told him to focus on his current work. The past did not matter. Only revenge mattered, but it did matter. J1 was sure of it. If humanity was going to destroy an entire civilization, they should at least know the complete truth. He had shared his concerns with only one person, Dr. Bora, the fleet's chief medical officer. She had listened carefully. She had promised to help him investigate. But they had to be careful. Questioning the mission was considered treason. The countdown began. 5 minutes. 4 minutes. 3 minutes. Across the fleet, engines powered up. The jump drives created a low hum that everyone could feel in their bones. This was really happening. After 50 years of preparation, they were finally going to war. Dr. Bora stood in the medical bay and looked at the young faces of her staff. Most of them were in their 20s. They had grown up in a society that lived for one purpose. Avenge Earth, they knew nothing else. They had been taught that the Valthene were evil, that there could be no peace. that the only solution was total war. Bora was 55 years old. She remembered Earth. She had been a young doctor on one of the last hospital ships to evacuate. She had watched thousands of injured people die because there was not enough room on the ships. She had nightmares about it still, but she also remembered what Earth had taught her. That violence created more violence. That hatred poisoned everything it touched. That even enemies were people. She worried about what would happen to humanity if they succeeded. If they destroyed the Valthene completely, would that heal the wound? Or would it just create a new one? Would they become the very thing they hated? 1 minute. The countdown reached its final moments. Daehyun gripped the arms of his command chair. Hana's fingers flew across her control panel, coordinating the jump sequence for 900,000 ships. It was the largest coordinated jump in galactic history. If even a small percentage of ships made an error, they could collide in jump space. But humanity had practiced this. They were ready. 10 seconds, Hana announced. 9, 8, 7. Daehyun closed his eyes. He saw his wife's face. Her smile. The way she had laughed at his jokes. The way she had held their children. He opened his eyes. The pain was still there. It would always be there. But soon he would have his revenge. 3, 2, 1. Jump. Space twisted. Reality folded. The fleet vanished from human space in a flash of light. They would travel for 8 months through the impossible space between stars. And when they arrived, they would bring fire and fury to the Valthene Empire. But none of them knew what they would really find. None of them suspected that everything they believed might be wrong. None of them imagined that their mission of revenge would turn into something completely different. Something that would change humanity forever. The fleet jumped into the darkness, and the darkness waited to show them the truth. 8 months passed like a dream. The fleet traveled through jump space where normal rules did not apply. Time felt strange there. Days blurred together. People trained, slept, ate, and waited. They checked their weapons 1,000 times. They ran battle simulations until everyone knew their role perfectly. They thought about what they would do when they finally reached the Valthene Empire. Then the alarm sounded. They were approaching the destination. All 900,000 ships prepared to exit jump space together. Daehyun sat in his command chair and felt his heart beating faster. This was it. After 50 years, they would finally see the enemy. The fleet dropped out of jump space at the edge of Valthene territory. Immediately, the sensors began scanning. They expected to find defensive stations, weapons platforms, warning signals, a strong military response. But the sensors showed something else. Something wrong. Hana stared at her screen. Her face went pale. "Admiral," she said quietly, "there is nothing here." "What do you mean, nothing?" Daehyun asked. "No signals. No ships, no defenses. The border worlds are completely dark." The command bridge went silent. This made no sense. The Valthene Empire was supposed to be powerful. They had destroyed Earth. They should have strong defenses at their borders. But there was nothing. Just silence. "Send scout ships forward," Daehyun ordered. "I want to know what happened here." Commander Yun-ho led the first scout team. He was 38 years old. Before joining the military, he had been an archaeologist. He studied old civilizations and dead worlds. Now he would use those skills to understand what happened to the Valthene. His ship approached the first Valthene colony world. Through the window he could see cities, but they were ruins. Buildings had collapsed. Streets were empty. There were no lights. No movement. Just death. "Landing team, prepare for surface exploration," Yun-ho said. He felt strange. They had come here to destroy the Valthene, but someone else had already done it. They landed near what looked like a major city. The buildings were beautiful, even in ruins. Tall spires made of materials that caught the light. Gardens where plants had grown wild without anyone to tend them. And everywhere signs of violence. Yun-ho and his team walked through the streets carefully. They found bodies. Not human bodies. Valthene. They looked almost human, but their skin had a crystalline quality. They had died fighting. Weapons were still in their hands. "Check the damage patterns," Yun-ho ordered. His team scanned the destroyed buildings. The weapons that had done this were not human. They were not Valthene either. Someone else had been here. Someone with technology that neither species had ever seen. In one building they found writing on the walls, written in Valthene blood. The words were desperate. A warning. Yun-ho took pictures of everything. This information needed to get back to the Admiral. Back on the flagship, Jae-won studied the images. He had spent years learning the Valthene language. Now he translated the bloody words. His hands shook as he read them. "Beware the harvest," the message said. "They came from the dark. They take everything. We tried to fight, we failed. If you find this, run." Jae-won brought the translation to Dae-hyun. The Admiral read it 3 times. His face showed no emotion, but Jae-won could see the questions in his eyes. "We need to explore more worlds," Dae-hyun said finally. "We need to understand what happened here." The fleet moved deeper into Valthene space. Every world they found was the same. Dead. Destroyed. The Valthene had fought desperately against something. And they had lost. Among the fleet, confusion spread. Young pilot Mi-young spoke for many when she asked her commanding officer, "Why are we even here? The enemy is already dead. What are we supposed to do now?" No one had a good answer. They had spent their entire lives preparing for this war. Now there was no war to fight. Some people felt relief. Some felt cheated. Some felt afraid. If something could destroy the mighty Valthene Empire, what chance did humanity have against it? On the third world, Yunho made an important discovery: an intact data facility. Most of the Valthene technology had been destroyed or damaged, but this building had been protected by thick walls deep underground. The computers inside still worked. "Get Jae-won down here," Yunho said into his communicator. "We have found their records." Jae-won worked for 3 days without sleeping. He connected to the Valthene computers. He broke through security systems. He downloaded everything he could find. Historical records, communications, cultural files, everything. What he found changed everything. The Valthene were not monsters. Their history showed a civilization of artists and scientists. They wrote poetry. They created beautiful music. They built cities that honored nature. They were not so different from humanity. More importantly, Jae-won found the records of first contact with humans. The initial meetings had been peaceful. Both sides were curious about each other. They had started trade negotiations. They shared information about their cultures. Everything was going well. Then Jae-won found the file that explained what went wrong. A human admiral named Go had become paranoid. He believed the Valthene were planning an attack. Despite orders from Earth to continue negotiations, Admiral Go had launched a strike on a Valthene station. Thousands of civilians died. The Valthene had been shocked, terrified. They thought humanity had declared war. They gathered their military and struck back at what they believed was a command center. It was Earth. Both sides had started a war that neither side wanted, all because of one paranoid man and a terrible mistake. Jae-won felt sick. He copied all the files onto a secure drive. Then he went to find Admiral Dae-hyun. He found the Admiral in his private quarters. The old man was looking at the photograph of his family. Jae-won almost turned around. "But this was too important, Admiral," Jae-won said. "I found something you need to see." He showed Dae-hyun everything. The peaceful first contact, the unauthorized attack, the Valthene retaliation, the whole terrible truth. Dae-hyun watched the files in silence. His face was like stone. When it was over, Dae-hyun was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "Does it matter, sir?" Jae-won asked. "My family is still dead. Earth is still gone. 3 billion people still burned. Whether the Valthene meant to do it or not, they still did it. Does knowing this change anything?" Jae-won felt frustrated. "It changes everything. We came here to destroy monsters, but they were not monsters. They were people who made a mistake. Just like us." "Keep this information classified," Dae-hyun ordered. "The fleet does not need to know." "But Admiral..." "That is an order, Lieutenant." Jae-won left feeling angry and helpless. He went to find Dr. Bo-ra. She was the only person he could talk to. When he told her what he had learned, she sat down heavily. "We have to tell people," Bo-ra said. "They deserve to know the truth." "The Admiral ordered me to keep it secret," Jae-won said. "Then we will wait for the right moment. But this truth cannot stay buried forever." The fleet continued toward the Valthene homeworld. They needed to see where this had all started. They needed to understand what force had destroyed their enemy. The answer was waiting for them, and it would be more terrifying than anything they had imagined. The Valthene homeworld appeared on the screens like a jewel floating in space. Blue oceans covered most of the surface. Green continents stretched between them. White clouds drifted peacefully. From orbit, it looked almost exactly like Earth, but as the fleet got closer, they could see the truth. The cities were in ruins. Smoke rose from 1,000 fires, massive craters scarred the continents, and in orbit around the planet, strange ships moved slowly through the debris. These ships were unlike anything humanity had ever seen. They were enormous, bigger than the largest human warship. Their hulls seemed to be made of both metal and something organic. They moved with purpose, slowly stripping resources from the dying planet below. "What are those things?" Hannah whispered. No one answered. No one knew. The sensors could barely make sense of what they were seeing. The technology was too advanced, too alien. These ships had destroyed the Valthene Empire. And now they noticed the human fleet. The strange ships turned, all of them moving as one. They faced the 900,000 human warships. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the sensors screamed a warning. "Energy readings off the scale," a technician shouted. "They are charging weapons. All ships battle formation," Daehyun ordered. "Prepare to engage." But they were too slow. The alien ships fired. Beams of energy that seemed to bend space itself cut through the human fleet like knives through paper. Entire battle groups vanished in seconds. Ships that had taken years to build simply ceased to exist. Hannah coordinated the defense, but it was hopeless. Human weapons barely scratched the alien hulls. Their shields, if they even had shields, absorbed everything. Meanwhile, every shot the aliens fired destroyed multiple ships. Alarms blared across the flagship. People shouted. Some prayed. Some cried. In the medical bay, Dr. Bora prepared for casualties that would never arrive. When these alien weapons hit a ship, there were no wounded. There were no survivors. There was nothing. "Pull back," Daehyun finally ordered. "All ships retreat to the edge of the system." The fleet ran. They jumped away in groups, abandoning their formations just to escape. Behind them, the alien ships destroyed another 20,000 vessels before the humans could get away. Then strangely, the aliens stopped. They did not pursue. They simply returned to harvesting the planet. The human fleet regrouped at the edge of the system. They had lost 80,000 ships in 3 hours. 80,000 ships! Millions of people. And they had not even scratched the enemy. In his quarters, Daehyun stared at the damage reports. His hands were shaking now, not from age, from fear. They had brought the largest military force in galactic history. And it meant nothing. Engineer Kyung-soo came to the command bridge with his team. He was 44 years old and had been designing weapons for 20 years. He had studied the battle recordings. He had analyzed the alien technology. Now he had something to tell the admiral. "They are not alive," Kyung-soo said. "Not in any way we understand. They are machines. Very old machines. Programmed to collect resources. Like harvesting equipment," Jae-won said quietly. "Exactly. They strip planets of everything useful. Water, minerals, atmosphere, even the soil. They take it all. They have probably been doing this for millions of years. The civilization that built them is likely long dead." "Can we fight them?" Daehyun asked. Kyung-soo hesitated. "Maybe, if we can reach their central control system. I found something in their attack patterns. They are incredibly advanced, but they follow rules. Programming. If we could upload a virus to their main node, we might be able to shut them down." "What would that require?" Daehyun asked. "A boarding team would need to get inside one of their ships, fight through to the core, connect to their systems, upload the virus, then get out before the ship destroys itself." Everyone in the room knew what that meant. It was a suicide mission. The chances of success were tiny. The chances of survival were zero. Vice Admiral Tae-yang spoke up. He was 59 years old and had fought in every major battle since Earth fell. He believed in direct action. "In strength, we should throw everything we have at them," Tae-yang said. "All 800,000 remaining ships. Overwhelm them with numbers." "That would be suicide," Bora said. "We saw what happened. They will destroy us all." "Then what do you suggest?" Tae-yang demanded. "Run away? Go home and wait for them to find us?" The room erupted in argument. Some officers wanted to fight. Some wanted to flee. Some wanted to try the virus plan. They shouted over each other. 50 years of unity shattered in moments. "Enough." Daehyun's voice cut through the noise. "We need more information. Send exploration teams back to the planet's surface. Find out if any Valthene survived. If they fought these things, they might know something useful." Yunho led another landing team. This time they went to the surface of the Valthene homeworld. They landed far from the alien harvesters, in the ruins of what had been the capital city. The destruction was total. Buildings that had stood for thousands of years were rubble. They searched for survivors. They found bodies, thousands of them. But then in an underground shelter they found life. About 3,000 Valthene huddled in the darkness. They were scared, starving and dying. But they were alive. One elderly Valthene woman came forward. Her name was Veth. She spoke broken human language, learned from stolen transmissions before the war. "You are human," Veth said. It was not a question. Her crystalline features showed fear. "You come to finish what the harvesters started." "No," Yunho said gently. "We came to understand what happened here." Veth laughed bitterly. It was a terrible sound. "The harvesters happened. They came 5 years after we destroyed your Earth. We thought they were punishment, divine justice for what we did. But they are not divine. They are just machines that do not care." "Tell us how to fight them," Yunho said. "We tried everything. For 3 years we fought, we lost. Our scientists found a weakness in their command protocols. The harvesters have rules to avoid damaging each other. If you can make them think your ship is one of them, you can get close. But we never had time to use it." Veth gave them all the data her people had collected. Research on harvester systems, codes, patterns. Everything that remained of Valthene knowledge. "Why help us?" Yunho asked. "Because your people and mine made the same mistake. We let fear and anger control us. We destroyed each other over misunderstanding. Now we both pay the price, but you still have worlds. You still have a chance. Do not repeat our errors." Back on the flagship, Kyung-soo combined the Valthene data with his own research. He created a virus. It was elegant and deadly. It would make the harvesters see each other as threats. They would destroy themselves, but someone still had to deliver it. Someone had to board a harvester ship and upload the virus directly to its core. It was a one-way trip. Hana volunteered immediately. She would lead the mission. She would take 100,000 ships to attack the harvesters head-on. While they were distracted, a small team would board one of the alien vessels. It was insane. It would probably fail, but it was the only chance they had. Daehyun tried to stop her. She was like a daughter to him. But Hana was determined. "I was born fleeing from Earth," she told him. "I have spent my whole life preparing for war. Let me end this war. Let me save what is left of humanity." She recorded a final message, not for the fleet, for Daehyun alone. She thanked him for being her family, for giving her purpose, but she also said something that shocked him. "I am tired of hating," Hana said. "I want humanity to remember what we loved about Earth, not just what we lost. I want us to build, not destroy. Promise me you will try." Then she was gone. 100,000 ships charged toward the harvesters. The battle was apocalyptic. Human vessels exploded by the hundreds, but they kept fighting. They bought time, minutes. That was all they needed. The boarding team reached a harvester. They cut through the hull. Inside was a nightmare. Biological and mechanical systems merged together. Automated defenses attacked them. They fought forward, losing people with every step. Kyung-soo reached the core. He connected his equipment. He began uploading the virus. It would take 5 minutes. The team held their position. They died defending him. One by one, the upload completed. The harvesters shuddered. Their weapons powered down. They began destroying each other, unable to distinguish friend from foe. The virus worked, but before they died, the harvesters sent out a signal, a distress call. Somewhere in the galaxy, more harvesters heard it, and now they knew where humanity lived. The fleet limped back toward human space. Of the 900,000 ships that had left, only 600,000 remained. 300,000 ships destroyed. Millions of people dead. And for what? Hana was gone. Kyung-soo was gone. So many others. They had won in a way. The harvesters in that system were destroyed. But the victory felt hollow. And the distress signal the harvesters sent meant that more would come. Humanity had won a battle but revealed its location to an enemy it could not defeat. Daehyun sat in his quarters and watched the stars pass by. He felt old, older than his 67 years. He had spent 50 years preparing for revenge. Now he had it. The Valthene were dead, but he felt nothing. No satisfaction, no peace, just emptiness. He thought about what Hana had said in her final message, about remembering what they loved instead of what they lost, about building instead of destroying. Was she right? Had they wasted 50 years on the wrong goal? A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Jae-won. The young officer looked determined. "Admiral," Jae-won said, "the truth about Earth needs to come out. People deserve to know what really happened." Dae-hyun was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "You are right. We built our entire society on a lie. It is time to face the truth." When the fleet returned to human space, they were met as heroes. Millions celebrated in the streets. The Valthine were destroyed. Humanity was avenged. But Dae-hyun knew the celebration would not last. Not when they learned the truth. He called a gathering of all the colony leaders, representatives from every human world. The meeting was broadcast across human space. Billions watched. They expected to hear about the great victory. Instead, they got something very different. Dae-hyun stood before them all. His white hair caught the light. His face showed every one of his years. He began to speak. 50 years ago, we lost Earth. 3 billion people died. I lost my family. Many of you lost people you loved. We were told that the Valthine attacked without warning, that they were monsters who wanted to destroy us. We spent 50 years hating them, 50 years preparing to destroy them, but the truth is more complicated. He told them everything. About the peaceful first contact, about Admiral Go's unauthorized attack, about the Valthine retaliation based on misunderstanding, about how both sides had escalated to genocide over fear and paranoia. The Valthine were not monsters, Dae-hyun said. They were people like us. They made mistakes like us, and both our civilizations paid the price. I led you into this war because I could not accept that truth. I gave you an enemy to hate because it was easier than admitting we were partly responsible for our own destruction. I was wrong. The silence that followed was deafening. Then the shouting began. Some people called him a traitor. Some wept. Some demanded his execution. The unity that had held humanity together for 50 years shattered in moments. Dr. Bora stepped forward. She had prepared for this moment. She spoke about the psychological damage of weaponized grief, about how trauma had transformed human society into something dark and violent, about the need to heal rather than hurt. We did not just lose Earth, Bora said. We lost ourselves. We became what we feared. We let hate define us. Now we have a choice. We can continue down this path, or we can choose to be better, to build a future based on understanding instead of revenge. The debates lasted for weeks. Some colonies wanted Dae-hyun executed for war crimes. Some wanted him pardoned for revealing the truth. Some wanted him honored for destroying the harvesters and saving humanity from a greater threat. The arguments grew heated. Violence broke out in some places. Through it all, the 3,000 Valthine survivors waited quietly in their temporary shelter. Humans argued about what to do with them. Some wanted them imprisoned. Some wanted them expelled. Some wanted them killed, even though they were all that remained of an entire species. Then Veth, the elderly Valthine scholar, asked to speak at one of the memorial services for the fallen fleet members. Many protested. How dare she speak at a ceremony honoring humans who died because of what her people did? But others thought she should be heard. Veth walked slowly to the platform. Her crystalline features caught the light. She looked at the crowd with eyes that had seen her entire civilization die. I know you hate us, she began. I would hate us too. My people killed 3 billion of yours. Your people killed 2 billion of mine. We destroyed each other over a mistake, over fear, over pride. And now both our civilizations are nearly gone. Her voice grew stronger. Grief and fear are powerful. They can make us into weapons. My people became weapons. Your people became weapons. But we do not have to stay weapons forever. We can choose to be more. Your Captain Hana understood this. She died not for revenge, but to protect what remained, to give others a chance. You still have 14 worlds, Veth continued. You still have billions of people. You still have a future. Do not waste it on hate. Do not become like the harvesters, destroying without purpose. Remember what you loved about Earth. Build something new, something better. And maybe, if you will let us, my people can help. We have paid for our mistakes. Let us help you avoid repeating them. The crowd was silent. Some people were crying. Others looked angry. But many looked thoughtful. Veth had spoken truth that was hard to hear but impossible to ignore. Mi-young was in that crowd. She was 23 years old. Everything she had been taught was wrong. The righteous war was based on lies. The evil enemy was just people who made mistakes. The glorious purpose was hollow revenge. She felt lost. After the service, she went to a memorial wall where holographic images of Earth rotated endlessly. Blue oceans, green forests, cities full of life. For the first time, she did not see it as a reason to fight. She saw it as something beautiful that was lost. Something worth protecting, not avenging. She thought about the 600,000 warships that remained. All that power, all that technology. It could be used to destroy, or it could be used to protect, to explore, to build. What would her generation choose? Finally, after months of debate, a decision was made. It was not what anyone expected. Daehyun would not be executed. He would not be pardoned. He would not be celebrated. Instead, he would lead a new mission. A diplomatic mission. Humanity would reach out to other civilizations in the galaxy. They would warn them about the harvesters. They would share what they had learned. They would try to build an alliance, not based on conquest or revenge, based on survival, based on understanding, and Daehyun, the architect of the revenge fleet, would become an ambassador. He would spend his remaining years not destroying but building bridges between species. It was fitting. It was punishment and redemption at once. When they told him, Daehyun smiled for the first time in 50 years. It was a sad smile, but it was real. I spent 50 years learning how to destroy, he said. Let me spend what is left learning how to build. The Valthine survivors were given refuge. Not as prisoners, as people. They would share their knowledge. They would help prepare for the harvester's return. They would teach humanity what they had learned about hatred and the cost of war. Jaewon took charge of transforming the military academies. Instead of teaching only war, they would teach diplomacy, history, different cultures, the mistakes of the past, how to avoid repeating them. Bora established schools across human space, places where people could learn about trauma and healing, where children could grow up understanding both the pain of loss and the power of forgiveness. And the 600,000 warships began their transformation. Some were dismantled, some were converted into exploration vessels, some remained as defensive forces, but their purpose changed. They would protect, not attack. They would defend what humanity loved, not destroy what humanity hated. It would take time. Healing always took time. But humanity had chosen a new path. They had looked at their pain and their mistakes and decided to learn from them instead of being consumed by them. It was the hardest thing they had ever done, but it was also the most important. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the harvesters were coming. But now humanity would not face them alone, and they would not face them as weapons, but as people who had learned what truly mattered. 10 years passed. They were years of change unlike anything humanity had known. The colonies that had spent 50 years focused only on revenge now learned how to live in peace. It was harder than anyone expected. But slowly, carefully, they built something new. Admiral Daehyun was 77 years old now. He moved slowly. His white hair was thin. His hands shook more than before, but his mind was sharp, and his purpose was clear. He traveled from world to world in a small diplomatic ship. With him were Yunho, now a respected cultural expert, and Veth, who served as advisor on making peace with former enemies. Together they visited alien civilizations across the galaxy. At first, many species refused to meet with them. Humans had a reputation. They had built the largest war fleet in galactic history. They were violent, dangerous, not to be trusted. But Daehyun was patient. He told the truth about what humanity had done, about the mistakes they made, about what they learned. Slowly, species began to listen. They were impressed by his honesty. One alien ambassador told him something that stayed with him forever. Your people are young. You made the mistakes of youth, but you learned from them. That is rare. Over 10 years, Daehyun helped build the Galactic Defense Coalition. 32 species joined. They shared technology. They shared knowledge. They established warning systems to detect harvester activity. And most importantly, they agreed on a principle. They would protect each other. Not conquer. Not destroy, protect. Meanwhile, humanity continued to transform. The 600,000 remaining warships became something different. Some were completely rebuilt as exploration vessels. They traveled to distant stars, making peaceful contact with new species. Others became construction ships, helping to build stations and colonies, but many remained as defensive forces. Because the threat was still out there, the harvesters were still coming. Mi Young was 33 years old now. She commanded one of the exploration ships, the Eternal Hope, named in honor of Hana. Her mission was to find dormant harvester ships before they woke up. It was dangerous work, but it was also meaningful. On one mission, she found a beautiful world. Green forests, blue oceans, mountains that touched the clouds. A pre-industrial civilization lived there. They had cities and art and music. They had no idea that a harvester ship slept in their asteroid belt, waiting to wake and destroy everything they had ever known. Mi Young faced a choice. She could destroy the harvester, but the explosion might destabilize the asteroids and rain destruction on the planet below. She could evacuate the species, but that would destroy their civilization just as surely, tearing them from their home. Or she could try something else, something harder. She chose the third option. Her team spent 3 years carefully dismantling the harvester. They took it apart piece by piece. They studied every component. They learned. And the species on the planet below never knew how close they came to extinction. That was what humanity did now. They protected quietly. They helped without demanding gratitude. They used their strength to shield the weak, not dominate them. Dr. Bora was 65 years old. Her Institute for Interspecies Understanding had campuses on 12 worlds. Students from dozens of species studied there. They learned history. All of it, including the mistakes. They learned about psychology and trauma, about how fear and grief could be weaponized, about how to prevent it. One day, a young human student asked her a question. Do you think we can ever truly heal from what happened to Earth? Bora thought carefully before answering. Healing does not mean forgetting. The pain of losing Earth will always be with us, but we can choose what we do with that pain. We can let it consume us, make us into weapons, or we can transform it into something better, into compassion, into determination to protect others from similar loss. We chose the second path. That is healing. Jaewon spent his time building an archive, a comprehensive record of every known civilization, their histories, their cultures, their mistakes and triumphs. It was stored in dozens of locations across the galaxy, protected, preserved. If the harvesters come, Jaewon explained. If civilizations fall, let there be a record. Let someone somewhere learn from what we were. Let our mistakes and our growth mean something. In orbit around where Earth once was, a monument floated in space. It was a garden, a biodome containing soil from all 14 human colonies and samples from 100 allied worlds. Trees grew there, flowers bloomed. Water flowed in carefully designed streams. At its center was a simple plaque. The words were written in 32 languages, one for each species in the coalition. They said, "We remember not to hate, but to love better." Representatives from all the coalition species came for the memorial dedication. It was a solemn ceremony. Dae-hyun stood at the podium, looking out at the assembled delegates. Behind him, a hologram of Earth rotated slowly, beautiful, lost, but not forgotten. 60 years ago, Dae-hyun began, I lost my family. I lost my world. I spent 50 years consumed by grief and rage. I built an army. I prepared for revenge, and when I finally got it, I felt nothing, because revenge is empty. It does not heal. It does not build. It only destroys. His voice grew stronger even as his body showed its age. But then something changed. We learned the truth. We discovered that our enemies were people just like us. We found that our pain was not unique. And we made a choice. We chose to transform our grief into something better, to use our strength to protect, not to punish. The harvesters are coming, Dae-hyun continued. Our long-range sensors have confirmed it. Multiple fleets. They will be here in 15 years. We may not survive, but we will face them together. Not as separate species driven by fear, but as a coalition united by hope. And that is humanity's real triumph. Not our weapons, not our revenge, but our ability to change, to grow, to choose understanding over hatred. The delegates stood and applauded. It was not a celebration. It was acknowledgement. Recognition that the path ahead would be hard, but they would walk it together. After the ceremony, Dae-hyun stood alone in the garden memorial. He touched the leaves of a tree grown from earth soil. He thought about his wife, his children, all the people he had lost. The pain was still there. It would always be there, but it no longer consumed him. Beth found him there. The elderly Valthine scholar walked slowly. She and Dae-hyun had become friends over the years. They understood each other in ways few others could. They had both lost everything. They had both learned to build from ruins. "Do you think we will survive the harvesters?" Veth asked. Daehyun was quiet for a moment. "I do not know. We are stronger together than the Valthine were alone. We have prepared better. But the harvesters are ancient and powerful. We may lose. But we will lose as people," Veth said softly, "not as weapons. We will face them with compassion and understanding. We will remember what we love. That matters." "Yes," Daehyun agreed. "That matters." 15 years later, the harvesters arrived. The coalition fleet was ready. 600,000 human ships stood alongside vessels from 31 other species. They were prepared. They had learned from the Valthine data. They had improved the virus. They had new weapons and new tactics, but more importantly, they were united. Not by hatred, not by fear, by the simple understanding that they were stronger together, that every life mattered, that even in the face of extinction, they could choose to be more than weapons. Mi-young stood on the bridge of the Eternal Hope. She was 48 years old now, a veteran commander. She looked at the approaching harvester fleet and felt no hatred, no rage, just determination. She would protect what she loved, not because of what she had lost, but because of what remained. Admiral Daehyun had passed away 2 years earlier, at the age of 85. He died peacefully, surrounded by friends from a dozen different species. His last words were about hope, about building, about choosing to be better. Now, as the coalition fleet prepared for the battle that would determine the fate of the galaxy, they carried his legacy with them. They were not fighting for revenge. They were fighting for the future, for the chance to keep building, to keep growing, to keep choosing understanding over destruction. The sensors showed the harvesters getting closer. Mi-young gave the order. The coalition fleet moved forward as one. 32 species. Millions of individuals. All different. All united. They did not know if they would win. They did not know if they would survive. But they knew who they were. They knew what they fought for. And they knew that they had already achieved something remarkable. Humanity had come to the edge of the galaxy seeking revenge. They had found something better. They had found redemption. They had found understanding. They had found hope. And as the battle began, as the fate of civilizations hung in the balance, one truth remained clear. The real strength of humanity was not in their weapons. It was in their hearts, in their ability to change, to grow, to choose love over hate even when hate would have been easier. That was what made them special. Not their military might, not their capacity for destruction, but their capacity for transformation, for choosing to be better than their worst moments, for building bridges instead of walls. The fleet charged forward into the unknown, ready to protect what they loved, ready to defend the future, ready to show the galaxy that humanity at last had learned what it meant to be truly